everyone that's out there watching from the MB&F community, from the Moser community, from Revolution, from the Rake. Welcome. I get to hang out with two of my favorite people today and to celebrate an incredible project, but also representing anniversary, a 15th year anniversary for MB&F. Congratulations, sir. A 15th year anniversary of the rebirth of Moser, which also happens to coincide with the 15th anniversary of Revolution magazine. So we are all joined together in the celebration of our 15th anniversary. Gentlemen.
Did you bring a cake?
No, because it's hard to do a mutual blowing out of candles in the Zoom. I haven't figured that one out yet, but when we see each other finally after this is all lifted, we should do a celebratory fondue followed by a cake. What do you think? Yeah, the three of us.
Makes sense.
Excellent. So, gentlemen, first of all, congratulations on this amazing new project. I think that like both of you guys are independently brands that I have so much admiration for, both in terms of what you do aesthetically, but also in terms of the technical innovation you guys have brought to watchmaking. So one of the things that I like when I talked to Max about why he wanted to kind of kick everything off, because, when I happen to have the privilege of knowing him when he used to be the CEO of a company called Harry Winston, where he also did amazing work and actually kind of him and Mike and a couple of other guys just basically created independent watchmaking, or the independent watchmaking we know. But he basically said he wanted to create watches that were a unique expression of what he wanted. What type of watches he would want to wear, the type of watches that when he closed his eyes and imagined something, that's what he saw. So, Edward, I would ask you, like, what for you made you want to become the owner and CEO of an independent brand?
Well, I guess it was meeting Max and then, getting that passion for independent watchmaking. I grew up more in the traditional watchmaking, but I don't know. I think my family, myself, we have quite independent mindsets and perspectives, always wanting to have our own thing, running it, deciding ourselves, creating ourselves. And then, seeing on the other side, like moving away from the big brand and seeing how creative, dynamic, resourceful are the true entrepreneurs behind independent brands, really give me the feeling that I wanted to be part of it. I remember that time. When did we meet, Max? 2008 or 2009? That was pretty much at the beginning of MB&F, and yeah. I was like, wow. This is incredible what he is doing and what other guys are doing, and I think that inspired me. And when the opportunity came to take over Moser, it's something different because Moser is very, it's a 192 years old brand. At the same time, it doesn't mean we need to be stuck with that huge history and say we need to do exactly what has been done for 192 years. I think what was cool about it is to say, let's think like those crazy guys like Max and others, but at the same time, let's play with traditions, and that's what we did.
When the Menons took over Moser, and we've been working with them before they actually took over, because a lot of our hairsprings are being made by them for now over 10 years. I was actually thinking, how are these guys going to put it off?
Yeah, I remember that lunch.
You're like a super classic small brand and actually make it relevant. And we're not here for any flattery, but honestly, what they've managed to do is unique in what's happened in the environment of the ecosystem of watchmaking, making a classical watch brand cool, making it appealing to the young, making it having sense of humor, and that is really something which blew me away, honestly.
No, I totally agree. I love what they've done to provoke the industry as well. I mean, I know that every year they were having a little bit of fun showing these different conceptual watches as well, but also, the introduction of Van de Black, the introduction of the Fume dials, which now, are a bit more popular in the industry as well. But there was a specific moment when I looked at what Edward had done with Moser, and I was like, fuck, that's cool, right? And it was kind of, for me, it was like the equivalent of like, okay, you see this girl every year and she's got glasses on, she plays the cello, and she's speaks 6 languages, but you wouldn't go like, wow, she's smokingly hot, right? And then suddenly you come back one summer and you're like, holy shit, it's kind of like She got contact lenses. She looked in the mirror and realized how crazily hot she was, and was like, you know what, I'm not going to even bother hiding it anymore. And to me, that was when he launched the Perpetual Calendar, right? Which has always been one of my favorite watches, but with 0 indexes on it, on the dial, which I love. So, you know, you basically have a perpetual calendar where the months are being told off of a tiny, tiny hand that's fixed on the cannon pinion and pointing to each of the indexes on the dial. So then all of a sudden, and of course you've got a date mechanism, all of a sudden you still have that date mechanism. You've got, of course, time, you've got the month, you've got a perpetual calendar, but the dial has nothing on it except for that. And it was like this whole idea of reducing things to the barest minimum. It was like looking at a Russian supremacist painting by Malevich, like black, white on white or whatever. And it was just awesome. And I was like, you know what? These guys are so cool and they've managed to do it. But Edward, for you, what was the watch that you saw from Max that you were like, I love what this guy's doing?
Well, I think from day one, I loved the all the concepts, the crazy, the machines were for me, you know, this interpretation of modern watchmaking that really pushed people forward, pushed the boundaries. I think many of the things we see, even with more established brands today, were inspired by those first creations, by Max, by Overk, by a handful of crazy people who were ready to take risks, to push those boundaries. And that really, for me, were the things where I really fell in love with independent watchmaking. But I think personally, what inspired me most also for Moser is probably the legacy line, because it's maybe what showed me that you can be classic, but yet you can be so bloody sexy. And I remember, I think the first time I saw it, where we were in Shanghai together with Max, and that's when you launched it. Remember, there was a fair. It's not a huge success, but we were all there, independent brands, you know, had quite some time on our hands in a big hall in Shanghai, and discovering the legacy machine. I was there with my brother, and it was like, we were both like, wow, this is, I mean, that's something that is traditional, yet it's so fucking sexy, and we would love to wear it. And I think today, what we're doing is a kind of realization of those dreams.
I totally agree with you. It was funny because I remember the first person that I heard talking about Max's legacy machine was a guy that he's fairly senior in Paddock, so I won't say his name, but he was just like talking to himself, like babbling hysterically about Max's legacy machine. And he's like, does he even know what he's created? It's incredible. So then I was like, dude, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, it's about Max's new legacy machine. And when I saw it, it was exactly that. It was this capacity to be incredibly classic, to even kind of evoke like ancient marine chronometers, but at the same time do it in a way that was so forward-thinking and so inventive. So I think both of the watches that we're going to look at today, which is created through this amazing collaboration, express exactly that. So we'll start with this incredible timepiece. So maybe, Edward, you can explain to us what this is, sir.
Well, there are two pieces on this picture that I see right now. So maybe I start with which one should I start with?
Max will be the one on the right. Yeah. Okay,
I do the one on the left. So the one on the left is you know, the Moser Cross or X MB&F. So the idea is really like it's a Moser model as a base, Moser movement, a Moser case, but interpreted by Max and his teams with elements from what MB&F is, and those elements. That you can see here is obviously this dial that is raised on top of the dial, which is reminiscent from this Thunderdome flying T. That for me is it's very cool. I mean, it gives you the perspective on the entire watch, but differently. You can look at it in many different angles. You can appreciate the mechanics, but at the same time, you still have a very nice full dial behind it where we can express our fumé. We decided to, I mean, there was a long discussion with Max about the sub dial being transparent or black or white or no dial at all. I mean, remember, Max, those discussions? Even considering like Vanta black and things like this. And I think having it transparent like this is very minimalistic, like we like it at Moser. So you can appreciate the mechanics behind it. It really shows all the elements that you need. You can still read the time very well, and you have the feeling like those things are floating out there. And I think that's what makes this quite incredible. It's 42 millimeters, so very easy to wear. And behind we have, I mean, for many years we developed, as Max said, many hairsprings for many brands, and we have things that you find in the Thunderdome, which is the cylindrical hairspring, and other brands are using now our cylindrical hairspring. But unfortunately, we could never use it for Moser watches because we always have the hands coming on top. So either you make a very big watch and you cannot see it, or you create something like this, where, you know, suddenly when I saw this, I was like, Max, that's where we can put the cylindrical hairspring. And it's cool because it's floating on top of the dial. So at the end of the day, it's I think it's the perfect watch to finally show what we can do with our hairsprings in terms of innovation, and what Precision Engineering, which is our division doing hairsprings for Moser, but also for MB&F and other brands, they're doing amazing things. And I think this is like of the nice Canva where we can really put it in or highlight it for the people to appreciate it.
Dude, that's so awesome. And just for those technical watch nerds out there, there's a Breguet overcoil on both sides of the cylindrical spring, on the top, on the bottom, which is just so cool. So Max,
so it's really unfolding. Yeah, it's very unfolding symmetrically, and that's what's so beautiful about it.
It is, yeah, perfect.
You can really see it breathe.
Amazing. So Max, what I would like to ask you about also, obviously, is this watch pays homage to two of the iconic pieces that you created. The Flying Cie, which is probably one of the dopest women's watches of all time, right? With this amazing flying tourbillon, but has this kind of canted display on the dial at 7 o'clock, as I recall. And then, of course, the legendary Thunderdome, which is your collaboration with Eric Coutre. Talk a little bit about those two watches and how you feel those two watches, in some ways, some of the energy and creativity of those watches informed this.
Well, the Thunderdome, I think I've discussed at length how complicated it was for me and for us to create, because it was the first time we were venturing into a watch for women, and so I went all over the place, and it took me many years to finally boil it down to what it became, which was this whole my way of saying I love you, basically, to women in my life, and while we were doing the Flying Cie, because remember they both came out the same year, Flying Cie in March and Thunderdome in December. While I was working on that, the Thunderdome, we were scratching our head as how we were going to actually put the hours and minutes on it, because the star had to be the whole 3-axis 3-cage gyro, and so we opened up little dials right, left, and center, and every time we looked at our drawings, it's like, oh, this is terrible. And then one day in a product meeting, I'm like, why don't we just use that dial we created at 52 degrees on the Flying Cie and put it on the Thunderdome? Of course, Eric Coutre was not exactly happy to have to rechange everything, but it was worth it. And so it became a line. It was not planned that way, not at all. And it became a signature. Like many of our signatures have started off like, and we discussed that in our previous talk, wouldn't it be cool if? So this is a typical signature which started off, wouldn't it be cool if? And so we've been working with conical gears on many of our calibers, where I think there's only one other brand in history that I know of has used conical gears. So we've managed this over the years. And it's true that when Edward came back to me, when I actually approached Edward the first time saying, I would love to do a collab and I would love to incorporate in a legacy what makes Moser so what I love in Moser. And he looked at me and he said, well, yeah, but why wouldn't you do something for a Moser piece also? Which initially I was like, really? And so I scratched my head for a very long time thinking, Moser is a flat, classic, beautiful watch, even though it's super cool. It's like, how can I bring something from MB&F? We're not just going to slap a battle axe rotor onto a classical watch. That doesn't make any sense. And one day I came back to him and I said, look, would you accept that dial, which he hadn't even seen it because he hadn't seen the Flying Cie and hadn't seen the Thunderdome. It's like, we're coming out with this. Would you accept to put that on one of your watches? And he immediately said, yeah, let's do this. And then what happened is that Edward came back to me and said, well, now we've got space. Why don't we incorporate that cylindrical hairspring that we developed for the Thunderdome in our piece? So this is what I love in these collaborations. It's never a one-sided avenue. Here, even much less. Here is definitely a two-way highway, where not only did we each work on the other's product, but the ideas came from everywhere. And the products are, of course, the goal. I mean, when we create a collab, it's always to create a super cool collaboration, super cool piece. But the journey is often as important, if not more important, than the piece. And you can see in these two pieces, the journey has been incredible. The working together has been, and I'm not saying that because everybody usually says, oh, it's great to work together. It's been a ball. It's been incredible.
That's amazing. And I'm just looking at it now, and I just realized that there's actually the hands are luminous, which I think is great. Also on like
the indexes as well, yeah.
That's fun. So I love that. Luminous indexes painted on sapphire as well. Now, a really cool watch.
And if I can just as a follow-up, initially, of course, we came with our little white dial in the Roman numerals, which is very MB&F legacy machine. And at some point, I told Edward, it looks too much like an MB&F. It's everybody's just, so let's try and find a dial which is at an angle, but that we have never used. And that's, as Edward said, we started looking at all sorts. We had no dial in Vanta Black, sapphire. There have been all sorts of tests, and then we finally settled on that one.
That's awesome, man. So cool. And so Edward was earlier mentioning that one of the watches he admires the most, which is also clearly a watch that I admire hugely, are your LM watches. And so it was very interesting to see that the other collaboration that you guys have done has been based on an LM101, but very interesting also because you also mentioned, and much of this conversation has been about your dials, your subdials, these stretch lacquer subdials with the Roman numerals, and this has no subdials. So tell us a little bit about this delicious and sort of really cool collaboration you guys came up with.
So the initial idea was me calling up Edward and saying, why wouldn't we incorporate Moser characteristics in an LM101? So for me, it was very clear. It was the fumé dial, and it's the concept. The fact, I mean, these guys were the first ones to have the courage since the 50s, because they were watches like that before, or 60s actually, to take all the signs off and you actually don't really know where you are. And so that was the initial idea. Edward came back to me with 2 points. The first was, yes, but please, let's do something on a Moser watch. And the other one is like, why don't we use, for the first time, our double hairspring in one of your pieces? And I was like, oh, yes. Now, now we're talking seriously. And so, for me, Moser could be boiled down. Edward would probably have another idea, but for me, what boils down is fumé dial, concept, double hairspring. It's a synthesis of the most important parts of Moser for me. And so, yeah, so imagine, luckily for us, we took the dials away from the base plate, because otherwise we wouldn't have had the space to put the double hairspring. Double hairspring is one on top of the other. You can't just plug it in what we've already designed as a movement. So we had to get the shaft and the balance wheel down to be able to put it. That only was possible because we'd already decided to take the dials off. So everything, like karma, everything just came together to create that piece.
It's absolutely stunning. And I also love the idea of using the double hairspring. I remember when I first attended my first Moser presentation, the idea of these two opposing hairsprings was so interesting in terms of concentric breathing. Edward, tell us a little bit about, for you, what was interesting for you to work on this piece.
Well, I think I resonate to everything that Max said. I think first, the journey was amazing. I mean, the teams working together. I think we have very different philosophies also in the way we work. I think MB&F, focuses on 2, maybe 3 big launches every year, amazing pieces. We have way more launches every year, so we sometimes have an approach slightly different. And that was interesting, the discussions we had, when sometimes Max would come and say, Edward, did you look at the angle of this element inside? I'm like, no, Max, I cannot go and look at this and change that. So I think we learned from that, and the perspective on how you design, how you the project management style. And I think for me, it was very, very inspiring to be able to collaborate with Max himself and his team. And I think for my people as well, and I hope for his team as well. Some days frustrating because you're like, oh my God, they're asking for this again, or we need to do that, but then some days like, oh, they came up with this amazing idea and they're so reactive and it's so cool. And I think like any project, you have those ups and downs, but having two teams coming together and having two projects in parallel made it a very, very smooth process where I believe we learned, and I personally learned a lot. When it comes to the product, and as Max said, when he came and said, I'd like to make an MB&F watch with your dials because I think it's beautiful, those fumé dials. I was like, this is really cool. I'm pretty honored, right? I'm like, oh my God, that would be that's nice that a brand like MB&F is coming to us. And then I always had in my mind this idea that we as independent need to collaborate beyond the product eventually, but already in many ways we are small brands. We don't compete with each other. We can benefit a lot from each other. And as Max said, we've been collaborating behind the scenes with the developments for many years. So could we make it more official, and like express our collaborations through certain things? So that's when I said, no, let's do it a two-way thing. And I was super excited that Max accepted that. And today, when I see the results, I'm even more excited. And then the design process was great. I think when Max said that, I started putting things on drawings, and I'm not going to show those drawings because I think Max was pretty. Well, I didn't really like what we first came up with, because we were like, let's take the craziest MB&F and try to Moserize them. And I think that would have been a mistake, because it was too far away from each other, and you cannot Moserize or MB&F-ize everything. And I think this legacy and the Endeavour Tourbillon are, I think, the perfect realizations, in the sense that they are very MB&F and they are very Moser at the same time. They're very different, but they're very similar at the same time. And that's what I like about it. I think there's going to be many customers who will want to have both. And I think that means we achieve something, that we are appealing with two very different products from two different brands, where maybe on one side, 70% is Moser and 30% is MB&F. And on the other side, it's 70% MB&F and 30% Moser. And it still appeals to similar people. And I find it super cool. And having the hairspring at the center of those two creations, which was not the objective in the beginning, it just became natural, as Max said. It was through discussion, we're like, oh my God, we can put the cylindrical hairspring. And then, I mean, how can we make it more Moser? But the double hairspring, I mean, my big frustration with the double hairspring at Moser is that, except on certain tourbillons, nobody see it and nobody understand it. And here, for the first time, we have a piece where it's like this at the center. It's like I was telling Max, look at the movies where we see this double hairspring. I spent so much time in the last years trying to explain how the double hairspring works, and then suddenly we have those movies of the Legacy 101 with the double hairspring, where you see it. You just see like the two hairsprings are working in opposite direction. The forces are compensating each other. And I mean, there's way less explanations to be done, and I think that's the beauty of a product like this one. And I'm super excited. My team is super excited. I think the guys on the hairspring development side are super excited, because they always loved MB&F, but now to have this collaboration like makes them even more proud about it. So yeah, I think to be frank, when we had this idea of creating concept watches, we thought it's just for us to express a little bit the idea that Moser is about minimalism and how far can we go in this research. A little bit like an art piece, And suddenly to see that reinterpreted by somebody else is super cool. I'm not saying that because Max is on the call, but I really love the watch, the Legacy 101 with this interpretation, because it for me brings together the two things I love about MB&F and what I love about Moser together.
That's the beauty, if I can just take over from there. These collaborations initially were very difficult for me. The first time I gave one of my pieces to somebody else to rework was Alain Silberstein with our very first HM2 black box in 2009. And I remember when he came to me and with his design, which was not at all what I expected, I was like, oh my God. And this didn't happen this time. But I realized you have to let go. Why? Because the whole idea of these collaborations is that the product is not yours. And it's not theirs either. We create pieces which none of us would have done alone. And that's what makes it worthwhile. And that's what I also, our collabs are usually our most collectible pieces. Try and find a Legacy 1 Silberstein. Good luck. They're all going over retail. And very few people know of Alain and his talent. And I'm pretty sure that something like this is going to happen with Amos. When we saw our pieces in Dubai during the January show, that's where Edward and I actually saw our pieces for the really completely finished. We're like, we should do more of these. We should do many more because they're so cool. We should do different colors. And we had the courage to say, no, we're not. We have to make them collectible. And honestly, I mean, I would love every year to do 15 more in a different color. It would be feasible like this, of course. No, it's a one-time only. So that's what makes it even more interesting.
Yeah, it's not a declination with many to come, etc. It's a one-off, and that's what I love. As you said, it's a capsule. It's something that it's now, and well, it doesn't mean that we cannot do collaborations in the future with together or with other brands. I think the success of what we both believe it's going to be a huge success, but that will probably trigger many other collaborations, and I hope other brands will collaborate as well. To be honest, a few years back, I approached a couple of other brands because I wanted the idea was to exchange movements. I went to another brand that also won the Grand Prix Genève and say, I give you our Perpetual Calendar, I give you 10 of them, just play with them, create like your interpretation of our Perpetual Calendar and give me your 10 of your movement that also won the Grand Prix Genève, and I'll reinterpret it the Moser way. And that brand unfortunately refused that. I think when they see the success of what we're doing today, they might reconsider, and maybe we'll do that. And I think that's the beauty of independence. That's the idea of, what can we do together? This year we were planning to be at Watches and Wonders together with Max. Everybody very excited to have like the booths next to each other. Your clients can discover Moser, my clients can discover MB&F. We love that. I mean, it's so difficult to get our brands out there and people to know us that if we can work together to make it better, not competing with each other, I think that's what we love about this industry, is to be able to work together.
That's awesome, man. And okay, because I'm sure when people watch this, they're immediately going to want to like start, putting their deposit down for the watches. Am I correct that it's 5 colors for each of the watches? So you've got blue fume, burgundy fume, cosmic green, off-white fume, and then I think ice blue fume as well, for both the Endeavour Cylindrical Tourbillon and also for the LM101. And then I think there's one color that's exclusive for Suzuki.
They're 4 times 15 MB&F, and they're 5 times 15 at Moser.
Okay, excellent.
Correct.
And forgive me for asking something so banal, but what are the prices of the watches?
So the LM101 is at 52,000 US.
And the Endeavour Cylindrical Tourbillon is at 80,000 US.
That's actually really good value for both of those watches. Bravo. I mean, it's great to me. It's the perfect watch for the coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. I think everyone is kind of like now trying to find some sort of symbol of hope, and to see a watch that was created out of friendship and brotherhood and true collaboration and celebrating an anniversary that celebrates independent watchmaking and the courage of independent watchmaking over 15 years, but also this amazing collaboration. To have these colors, which when I look at these colors, they make me smile because they're hopeful and they're joyous and they're happy as well. And then in addition to that, and I know Edward mentioned that earlier, that it was important that for both of you guys that these watches were strong value propositions as well, because of course people want to buy watches, but they also want to feel as if they're getting good value as well. And I had asked you a question also about, I know the Endeavour Tourbillon has got a modular sort of tourbillon, so you can actually take the tourbillon bridge with the tourbillon out, and that allow you to make it more cost efficient in terms of developing the movement.
and service as well. But yeah, I mean, that was a good question you asked me before. But yeah, I checked with the construction. So the cylindrical tourbillon is a module, same way we did with the normal tourbillon and our escapement. So you can by removing 2 screws, you can take the entire cylindrical tourbillon and replace it with a normal tourbillon. But why would you do that? At the same time, in that particular case, we had to give a little bit more power on the barrel. So the barrel would have to be changed, but the rest is very similar. As I said, we want it to be, it's an interpretation of a Moser model. So we didn't want to change everything and recreate a movement. So that was what was fun about it, was to play with something that existed, and using the flying T and coming at the center and taking the information and then put it with an angle, and at the same time it's giving space for the tourbillon and expressing the tourbillon even further, was nice in the sense that we didn't just create something completely new. We worked with what we already had, because the idea was that it was, let's take something from Moser and make it MB&F in a way, and let's take something from MB&F and make it Moser, without having to recreate something from scratch.
Totally, and honestly, it's an amazing value for the cylindrical flying tourbillon. It's insane, And Max, listen, you're like basically the father of collaborations, right? I mean, you were the first one to do this. Went back in Harry Winston, where you created the Opus watches, which were all collaborations between a brand. Well, basically yourself and watchmakers, everyone from Felix to Francois Paul and honestly, kind of put those guys in the spotlight for the first time, and I think we're a big sort of jumping off point for them for the wonderful careers that they have. For you, what is the importance of collaboration, the importance of friendship, and the importance of making these kind of projects that make people smile?
At the beginning of MB&F, it was just about being honest. It's like, of course, I was all alone in my flat, so clearly I wasn't the guy who was going to make everything from A to Z. And it's just about, I want to credit everybody who's worked with me on my project. So I think you have to see the 2 different ways of seeing. MB&F is my ideas, and then I've got this incredible group of people internally and externally who actually can transform them into the reality. When we do a collab, it's like one of our pieces, then we give to somebody else who actually modifies it. And that's when I was saying you have to keep your ego in check, because it can be a little bit complicated sometimes. What I think interesting is I'm half Indian, half Swiss. I've got these 2 DNAs from completely different cultures, and it was very difficult for me when I grew up to be half-half, especially living in Switzerland. And I tried to be very Swiss, and I became very Swiss. And then I sort of accessed over the years, let my Indian part, my more Oriental part come over. And I think I'm a better person for that. And I realized that when you've got 2 completely different bloods coming together, it makes for interesting creations. And so for me, I've got three hats in my life. I'm a creator, I'm a curator, that's on the Mad Galleries, and I am a person who's actually creating a journey with other people. And when you realize that, I think when you're young, you think you're the center of the world. And as you grow older, you realize that you're just a little speck of dust. But the way that dust connects with other dusts becomes a galaxy. And so the journey, the collaborations are about the journey. And the child which comes out of it is always interesting.
Love it. Thank you guys both very much. Edward, please give you my regards to your wonderful dad as well. He taught me one of the secrets related to fondue, so a little bit of mustard. So thank you guys very much. It's been a pleasure. And again, congratulations. I love the watches.
Take care, guys.
Guys, thank you.
Thank you, Wade. Thank you.